Hi guys, Tom Frampton here from Mastering the Mix, and welcome to another mix walkthrough video where I show you what steps I take to get a song sounding its best. Hopefully, you'll learn something new to get your productions sounding better than ever. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get more videos like this. And don't forget to grab the free trials of our plugins from the link in the description. Okay, so today I'm going to be stem mastering this awesome indie track by Dutch Criminal Record. It's called Naughty's Nostalgia. So just listen to the mix now, checking it out in mono. That's a really solid mix, sounding great in mono and in stereo. Let's have a listen to some reference tracks to see how it's comparing right off the bat.
Life got the best of me, but...
So I've imported a few indie tracks here, and I've hit the level match button in reference. So all of the other reference tracks are matching the same loudness as the original that I'm working on. I've hit level match all tracks, so they're all matched to the original. Just trying to get a picture and a direction of where I want to go. Here we can see this track has been lowered by minus 15 decibels, and it's super loud. It's the short-term LUFS is minus 5, so I think I'll stay away from the Carry Me reference track and use this one, I Can Talk. This seems to be the most similar. The tonal balance is comparable already. We can see the low end here is about 2 decibels quieter in the track that I'm going to be working on. Here we've got the 1975. It's, yeah, again, the low end, it's the same problem here, that the low end is a bit too weak in the mix. And in both of these reference tracks, the white level line is showing that the high end is attenuated too much. So let's start by getting the loudness up to roughly where we want to end up. Shooting for around minus 8, minus 9 short-term LUFS. Gonna adjust the look ahead and attack there. Let those transients pop through. Let's add some compression to kind of glue those sounds together. I'm going to have a low ratio here of around 1.3, 1.4 to 1. See, we've got the needle just tickling the signal there. We want to try and get it returning back to 0. See, it's a bit loud coming in, so I'm just going to reduce the input gain. It's a nice glue, and the soft clipping is also adding a bit of punch. So I'm just going to increase this again to bring it up to around minus 8 or minus 9 short-term LUFS. I like to set the loudness first so that all of the other changes are feeding in to the limiter, and I don't get any nasty surprises later on. Don't have to be super precise here, but that's a good starting point. So we'll find that the reference tracks are still all level matched. So we can see again, that low end is just lacking. I can hear that the bass is kind of missing that sub. So I'm going to try and juice it up with this vitalizer. I'm also going to grab our plugin, the Mastering the Mix plugin Bass Room, and transparently push up those low frequencies. It's really lifting it out of the mix there. We don't need the targets here because it's on a single channel. So we just... some build up around 100 Hertz here, so I'm just going to dynamically bring that down a touch. We want to just control the volume around that range because we've just pushed it quite hard. And the attack of that bass as well is poking through the mix a little bit too much, so let's just again dynamically bring that down. Experimenting with a few different levels here, see what's going to work best. The way the bass is recorded, there isn't a ton of sub-frequencies in the actual recorded audio, so we're a little bit restricted there. So I've also pulled in the original mix there, so we can always refer back to the original mix and make sure that we're constantly making positive progress. Again, level matched. The reference has pulled up the original mix by around 10 decibels to match the new mastered loudness. Let's get this kick starting to poke through the mix here. Compressor just tickling the signal there. We can also try animate. We'll get the punch section really pushing it through. You can hear that's really lifted it out of the mix now. It's a bit too much. Sometimes accentuating the effect and then pulling back on it is a good way to get the vibe right and then dial it back in so it sounds a bit more natural. When we were painting that picture of what we wanted the sound to be like when we were listening to the reference tracks, it was the low end that was lacking. So here we want to try and push just the low end in the kick. So comparing it to the original mix now, we can hear that the low end is much more pronounced. Having both the compression and animate working together is a bit much. I'm just pulling back on the percentage of the mix here of this compressor. I'm going to level match this now. I've pushed the bass up high. Really lifts it out of the mix. So the level line here in reference is telling me that I've boosted the low end, and I can hear that as well. kick in the bass and the low end were the things that were sticking out most when I was listening to these reference tracks in the beginning. So I just want to see how we've come along now with these changes. Good sanity check, because even though I've boosted the low end quite a lot, I still feel like it needed a bit more. The other thing I'm hearing in the reference tracks is that the drum tops, like the hi-hats and the snares, are just poking through the mix so much more. So I'm going to use an EQ here, I'm going to use Mix Room to pull out those frequencies. So I've boosted the high end here, and now I'm focusing it more in the sides than in the mid. Let's do the same with the snare here. Just going to try and pull out. That's starting to snap there, so I'll just pull that back and now set it to the mid, so it only focuses on the snare. We always want to bypass these plugins as well. Level match them and bypass them. Using an expander here. So every time the audio goes over this threshold here, it's going to be expanded and get a bit more volume. Bring out these hi-hats now. So punch is more of a transient module, so you can hear they're now really sticking through. Of course, more punch and more expansion increases the volume, so we just got to pull out that output slider. There. See, the original mix now sounds a bit flat in comparison to the master. Just bringing out the dynamics of the drums just lifts it out of the speakers. Gonna add a bit more dynamic character now with Ignite. So this is we're working on the drums again here. Just bringing out a bit of grit in the snare. See, that's added a lot of attitude just to the snare. Doesn't need that much. We've got the right setting in there. Now it's going to dial in the precise amount. Sounding good. All of the plugins on a channel strip, they work together, so you gotta, if you change one, you might have to go back a step and make a few adjustments. Okay, so what's the next thing that's sticking out to me? It's the vocals. So I'm going to use Mix Room here. I'm going to load up a preset. Vocals, male rock. It's going to analyze the audio, and it's going to give me a target curve. There we go. So it needs to be boosted around 4.5. I'll add those smart bands. And straight away you can hear a lot more clarity. Yeah, it sounded really muddy before. Doesn't have to be exactly on the targets. We can pull down that green band a little bit. And in the context of the whole master,
great. Starting to sound like a record. See if we can remove some resonances here. Gonna make a really thin cue and just pull out a few resonances, giving the vocal a bit of a cleaner, smoother sound. Remove some of this low end. You don't want to go too much here because you can make the vocal sound thin, so you've got to really dial in. Listen to the vocal in the context of the whole mix. Anything that really sticks out above anything else can usually come down a touch with a nice thin cue. Control this area slightly. It's a bit of a build up around 1K. I'm gonna zoom in here on these frequencies. See if there's anything else poking out. 1.9. If it sounds bad when you start to boost it like that, you might need to just pull it back a touch. So we've boosted the clarity and removed some resonances there. So we're going through the stems one by one here. Let's have a listen. Can solo this area of the frequency spectrum. The white level line there is showing me that the track that we're working on is just a little bit below the reference track. So let's see if we can lift that out a bit. Gonna set the filter node to master. It's nice and transparent. The master mode, you can only make boosts or cuts up to 4 decibels, so it's fine for this kind of application. Notice how I'm making the majority of my EQ decisions whilst listening to the channel in the context of the whole mix. Then we zoom in, solo it, level match it, compare it before and after. We want to be sure that every single step is positive progress. So a little trick we can do here to add a bit more clarity. We're going to sidechain the vocals here. So we're sending in the signal of the vocals, focusing the ducking of this multiband compressor on the mids only. So every time the vocal hits, the music will duck out of the way, just slightly, 3 decibels. Nice fast attack, medium release. Just subtly reduces those conflicting frequencies. Notice how the white level line in reference, it's getting closer and closer to that central 0 decibel line. So with the 1975 mix here, it's dipping below in the high end. Yeah, this reference track is just crushed. Okay, I'm really happy with the direction this is going in. I'm feeling like there's a really good improvement from the original mix. See if we can add some width here. Adding some width to the music stem. Don't want to take it too wide here. When you boost the width like this, the high end can sound a bit harsh, so you've got to be careful there. I prefer to not hit stereoize there. I feel it sounds a bit more coherent. So this blue colored in area is also, this is the stereo width in the Trinity display there. So the stereo width between my track and the reference tracks are all very comparable. We've got a nice mono low end and some good widths happening around 1K to 2K. A dynamic lift to the kick here, to the drums, sorry. This is the body of the snare. Just going to try and control this a bit. See, now when I duck it in this way, it just completely kills the transient. So what I'll do is I'll switch it around. So now we're accentuating the transient, but we're starting off the gain a little bit lower. This method kind of decongests the sound. Again, let's see if we can reduce some of these peaks and resonances on the music channel. Notice I'm making a lot of these changes whilst monitoring the chorus. This is the part of the song that best represents the entire frequency spectrum, from the lows to the highs. So as we work on this section, everything kind of falls into place when the other parts of the song kick in. Again, careful here not to overdo it. Constantly, not spending too much time zoomed in with the channel soloed, not spending too long just listening to the track. We're constantly going back to reference tracks and the original mix. Being as efficient and effective as possible, staying on the right track. Of the vocals were kind of cutting through a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to, again, dynamically reduce that. Zooming in here. So now the brightness is kind of sitting between these two reference tracks, and that's cool. It's kind of, you don't necessarily have to match one exactly.
Hey, how's it going? Did you get a job?
So now we're approaching the actual master channel. This is the overall stereo width to the whole sound. It's good to keep it subtle here.
I've eaten my salad days and life's passing by.
Again, now that when the channels combine, a few resonances can make their way into the mix. So we're doing subtle adjustments both on the stem level and on the master level. This part of the song kind of goes into a bit of an outro, so I'm just going to loop the chorus again. you boost the frequency and it feels like it's in tune, you don't want to kill it. Yeah, this one is out of tune, so let's just pull that down slightly, just a few decibels. A preset here, Modern Rock Master. So Mixroom is going to analyze this mix, this master, and then compare it to the preset and give me this. This curve is what it's suggested, so we can... This is a rock master, so you can kind of hear it's trying to push out those electric guitars, and it's not the right sound for this track. So I'm just going to copy that over to B and keep it in place. And now I've changed it to indie. Let's see. So with indie, this one is sounding a bit thin, a bit too bright, obviously. So let's get rid of that top end orange band. We'll level match to make sure it's a fair comparison. So definitely missing that warmth. It's not the right sound. But if we change the gain scale, we just dial in that sound a little bit. The curve sounds great, it's just the amount. See if we can reduce these down below 4 decibels and get the master filters on, which are a bit better for mastering. Yeah, setting the gain scale to around 30%. It's given us that brightness. Let's see what happens when we actually use the reference track. Here we go. I'm going to use the reference track that we've been using so far. I'll set a target. So we're going to loop some sections of the track to create a profile. Create the targets. It's going to analyze the audio and it's going to show us how to get from our sound that we have to the sound of the reference track. So let's see. Okay, so to get to the sound of the reference track, it's telling us to make some cuts in the high end. And now we can see the level line is almost completely flat. So it's a very similar tonal balance, but it's not quite right for this track. It's not quite the vibe I'm going for, but it's a great starting point. So again, let's adjust that gain scale. Let's find a nice middle ground between them. So that's nice. That's starting to sound really warm. And now we can see it's a bit more high frequencies than the reference track, but that's okay. Again, let's start here with the preset. Pop Soul Chief. It's asking me to push the bass frequencies a bit too much. Here we go, rock indie. This is a bit more in line. Just a few minor adjustments here in bass room. See, we've got closer and closer to the sound of our reference track. It's guided us to get this kind of really well balanced sound across the spectrum. See how it sounds compared to the original. So much more clarity. Toms are kind of coming out a bit too much. I'm just going to add some side dynamic reduction just to control those fills a little bit. -8, pushing up into -7 now. And change this channel linking so the transients pop through a bit more. Reference showing us that the high end is actually a bit more than our reference track. That's okay. Checking the peak here now with levels. Making sure got enough headroom there. That's sounding good. Again, around -9 short-term luff, so that's good stuff. Stereo width looking very nice there. Excellent. So now I'm going to bounce out the track, 24-bit, 44.1, and I'm going to watch the true peak as it goes through. It stays below -0.1, so that's good. I'm going to load it here and expose just for final quality control. Here we go. So we've got a few little phase issues at the beginning. So this is the guitar. This is the really wide guitar. So we're just going to listen to these sections to make sure we're happy with how they sound. Expose is just flagging up potential technical issues, but those sound great to me. We're peaking at -0.24 decibels true peak. It's also good to kind of hear these transitions between louder and quieter sections just to make sure things explode nicely and dynamically.
Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get more videos like this. And don't forget to grab the free trials of our plugins from the link in the description.